I don't want to be hated anymore, so instead of actually giving my honest thoughts about Shaman King 2021, I'm just gonna sing it praises that the show 100% totally legitimately and unironically deserves. And before you ask, I'm not just gonna stop making these videos because trust me, there's a very good reason why. Anyways, I loved the most recent episodes of Shaman King 2021. They're so good. I especially love the part of the show where the writers reference the manga a bunch of times instead of letting the show be good on its own merits. Anyways, I genuinely really like the recent episodes of the show. Just some minor things to talk about before we go into specifics. The animation seems to have improved in this part. Anna's mind rating was addressed, and it's not a problem anymore, and the pacing of the show seems to have drastically improved for me. Also, I don't like the dub for the show. It's bad. That's all I have to say for it. This portion of the show is what I would call genuinely good. To start, Ren gets revived, and he gets a good moment with Yo afterwards. It feels like the two are genuinely friends in this scene, and Ren showing signs of true gratitude is nice to see. The way his tattoo gets split down the middle due to his new scar is a pretty cool way to portray Ren's growth and step outside of the cycle of hatred, as the show puts it. Horo also gets some love. We get some insight into his family situation. He learns the useful tip to make himself more competent. It's a nice moment. After his 3v1, Lizurg comes in, kills these guys, and helps carry Horo back to Yo and the rest of the gang. And this is where shit starts to go down. Because of what Lizurg did, some of Hao's goons came to avenge what happened to their friends. One of the main points of this arc is the tried and true quote, "What goes around comes around," or as Yo puts it, "You get what you give." The idea is that Lizurg killed Hao's minions, which led to them seeking revenge. So instead of retaliating, Yo decides it's best to retreat, so the cycle of hatred cannot continue. What's cool about this theme and how it's being portrayed is that it isn't just something that came out of nowhere for this one arc. A lot of the story's key players' motivations are tied to their hatred for Hao, and Hao had only done the things that he had because of his hatred for humanity. So this moral that gets brought to light is actually something that makes sense and correlates to the rest of the series. It's very functional in conveying this message.
お前モルフィンはどうしたんだ？え？父さんがくれた大切な持ち霊だよ。離れ離れになるはずがないじゃないか。かわいいな。え？なんでもねえよ。おかしなこと言うようくんだな。
I like this scene. It gives Lizurg a lot more depth than he had before, and it's able to communicate meaning through a few simple reaction shots. I'm starting to like Lizurg a lot more now. In service of the cycle of hatred theme, this arc also mixes in a story with Chocolove where, yes! Fuck yes! I called it! I knew Chocolove was the one who made these kids fucking orphans. Fuck yeah! What? Okay, so he got shot in the chest, but, I mean, I can still celebrate, right? Yeah, I could have celebrated earlier, but I got it right, come on now. Anyways, with the death of two of Yo's friends, Ryu died too, who the fuck cares? The show introduces a team called Gandara, a group of god-class shamans who have the power, just as the X-Laws do, to bring back people from the dead. And I don't know about this one. Introducing a group of characters who can cure death kind of just erases a lot of the tension in the show. I didn't complain about it when it was revealed Jean could do it because the X-Laws are a more dubious group and therefore wouldn't give the main characters access to this ability aside from the time they cured Ren, but with Gandara, there really isn't anything that could stop the main characters from just going to them whenever they have a problem. It also makes Yo's sacrifice to save Ren seem pointless, and the show only waited until now to reveal that there was another option available to give Yo's decision some more weight. Maybe someone is gonna argue that it's more realistic for some things to feel like this, that not everything in life has a point, but in a story where you can control everything, every event that you write must feel meaningful. Anyways, Yo decides to fight the Golem as Chocolove gets the treatment that he needs, and at a certain point in the fight, he gets shot in the chest by a giant laser. A lot of people said that Yo acting out of character in the Osarezen arc was justified by the fact that he was 10 years old in that flashback. In my pinned comment on that video, I explained that Yo was described to be lacking certain emotions, meaning that he should be incapable of expressing the emotions that he lacks, therefore meaning that regardless of age, Yo should be the same. But even if we don't take that into consideration, then let me raise another argument. Imagine you see a 10-year-old boy and he's the type of person to scream in bed about how confused he is and yell in reaction to pretty much anything. Now imagine that same boy 5 years later getting shot in the chest with a fucking laser. I doubt he'd have a poker face as it happened to him. It's not even portrayed as if it happened too fast for him to react. He had plenty of time to show some form of shock or anything. You could also argue that he was resisting the urge to react because he wanted this dumbass to feel safe, but after getting shot in the chest with a laser, I think he should react, at least a little. It's not realistic for a person to just sit on the pain like nothing happened. And if you're going to argue that this is an anime, so it doesn't have to be realistic, then don't argue for the concept of realism in the first place. This whole argument started because people said it was more realistic for people to change as they grow. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that, but be consistent with your arguments. There are even less extreme examples of this, where Yo reacts to something far less stimulating in a much more aggressive way. For example, a lot of his reactions to Anna being angry are over the top, and this is in the present, so there's no excuse here. His character in the anime is inconsistent whether he's 15 or 10, which only goes to show me that the portrayal of Yo in the Osarezen arc wasn't an intentional representation of a younger and less experienced Yo, but rather an accidental byproduct of flanderizing one aspect of Yo's relationship with Anna, which wasn't that good of an aspect in the first place. What's weird is that there's actually a perfectly good example of how Yo should react to Anna present within this anime itself. I'm jumping ahead a bit, but in episode 38, Yo's fear of Anna is much more restrained compared to other times where he's screaming his ass off. This makes a lot more sense given his personality traits. But I digress. Yo's fight with the Golem gets interrupted by Hao, who wants to absorb the Golem to make himself even more powerful. Thankfully, Lizard comes and brings in the cavalry. Hao has one of the coolest lines here.
なんでお前がここにいる? お前は目的がなければ散歩にも行けないのか?
So fucking awesome. I gotta say, even though I wasn't a huge fan of his whole demon possession thing, he's still a pretty entertaining villain, and at least the motivations that were revealed in the Osarezen arc added to the theme being explored in this one. At some point in the fight, it's revealed that the father of these kids is actually controlling Serum, which isn't a really impactful twist, it just kind of happens, but whatever, it doesn't ruin this arc or anything. Eventually, the situation goes back to a fight against the Golem, and Chocolat makes his return more powerful than ever thanks to his near-death experience. Here's another reason why I like this arc. It serves double duty as a training arc, making a lot of the protagonists more powerful in a short amount of time, and in a way that feels urgent and tense. After a few more minutes of fighting, Spirit Dad has one of the quickest and strangest change of hearts ever, and passes on to the afterlife. One other problem that I do have with this arc is that it does have kind of an anticlimactic finish. It's not the fact that Anna interrupts the fight that makes it this way. It's the fact that the whole reason behind this arc happening just gets resolved in a really ham-fisted way. As soon as the Golem runs out of mana, Spirit Dad just decides to let go of all of his earthly desires. I don't know, I feel like a person who was so attached to something they were working on to the point that they would possess their own daughter in order to keep working on it wouldn't be fine with leaving after one setback. Even if his efforts were fruitless, I think it would be more fitting if he screamed or something and did anything to try to keep his hold on what little life he has. But he just stops, and you could argue that once he realized he was dead, he thought that what he was doing was pointless, but he already overcame death and is now a spirit, so that logic wouldn't really add up. Maybe you could also argue that he had unknowingly possessed his daughter, and once he realized he was doing that, he decided to stop, but to that I'd have to ask, how? All he would have to do is look down and say, oh shit! I'm a lolly now. He wouldn't even have to do that much. Going from this to this, the height difference must be fucking astounding. I don't really care about this though. The arc ends with Chocolat and Yo talking, and Chocolat reveals that he's blind and he'll remain that way as a way of repenting for what he's done. The rest of the cast comes in and the emotionless Serum cracks a smile seeing her dad's murderer getting the shit kicked out of him. The overall arc was pretty good. I liked it. The next few episodes revolve around Yo re-entering the Shaman fight. Now, going back on his word doesn't seem like the type of thing that he would do, so he'd need a really good reason to want to do that, and one is provided. See, this brown boy here comes in and says that Hao will kill all of his friends if he doesn't, but even with this, Yo still doesn't know what to do, so Anna decides to give him a little push, and he ultimately decides to go to the X-Lost to ask them to reconsider their deal. Meanwhile, we get a scene of Ren and Horohoro talking. What I find interesting about the scene is that Ren straight up admits that he's scared of Yo. He fully acknowledges Yo's power. The reason why I find this interesting isn't just because it shows Ren's growth from the arrogant shithead he was in the beginning, it has to do with the way the original anime handled revealed Ren's relationship with Yo. In the first adaptation, Ren had a more subtle fear of Yo. It's made clear that he has immense respect for him, and he recognizes him as an ally, but there was a part of him that knew he was way stronger than him. He never mentions it himself, though, and that's something that I like. It kind of reminds me of how a real person would handle those feelings. He leaves it in the back of his mind, and it becomes more of an underlying problem as he continues to keep it bottled up. Even though I saw it as a weird choice for how to try and recruit Ren really late into the story, I like how it was resolved and how Ren's inferiority complex was portrayed. Instead of actually becoming evil, Ren just challenges Yo to one final fight and puts it all behind him. It's a nice mini character arc for him. I'm not saying that this scene in the 2021 anime is bad, it serves its purpose well, and it isn't even really a comparison of these two things because they have two different roles within their story. I just wanted to mention that since it made for a nice segue. As you'd expect, the X-Laws aren't so understanding of Yo trying to flake out on his end of the bargain, so since this is shonen, they start fighting. They're interrupted by Lucas though, one of Howe's subordinates and the previous leader of the X-Laws. This fight has some pretty cool setup. It's a duel between master and student, classic shit that works really well for a reason. But there's this really dumb comedy moment here that kind of ruins the mood. Generally speaking, the sequence is good. It's got some nice tension and it does a good job giving Marco more depth, but come the fuck on, man. I guess I should bring up this show's use of comedy here. It's really off-putting at times. The tonal shifts in the show give me physical whiplash. It's especially apparent in this scene because this is like a battle to the death and Yo is just standing on the side acting like this is some big joke. The way that Yo comments on this match makes this death duel seem like a damn fairy tale scuffle, but the episode ends on a pretty high note. Lizurg jumps into the fray and teams up with Yo to try to stop the two of them from fighting. One of the best parts of the scene is that it carries the message from the last arc instead of just forgetting about it. Keeping the shit relevant makes things a lot more focused and organized in your story, and even if it's a bit in your face about it, at least it provides the opportunity for more subtle connections to that one connecting message. In the next episode, Lucas is brought down not by Marco, but by Lizurg, Yo, and the Iron Maiden. During their fight, Lucas reveals that the Iron Maiden isn't actually a holy girl, but just a regular person who was raised to be the symbol of a cult. And it's a heavy scene where Jean comes to terms with the fact that her whole life has been a lie, and Marco, burdened by the heavy guilt of lying to all of his companions, tries to end it all. What the fuck? I don't like Marco's backstory. Seeing his character up until now, you'd think that he'd have a really gruesome past that would explain what made him so rigid and spiteful towards Hao, but the anime doesn't even take it seriously when they reveal it. Isn't it so funny that he was the CEO of a car company? That's so weird. All of the seriousness of the X-Laws is practically erased now. It ruins the mysticism behind their group too. Seeing one of the most important figures of the X-Laws' backgrounds be rooted in something so ordinary is strange, and to make it worse, the anime doesn't take Marco seriously either. They focus more on pointing out how unexpected this is instead of showing the tragedy behind his character. The only thing they do is put in a line saying, "and then Hao took away everything from me," as if that would solve the problem. Now, in the original version, Marco's backstory wasn't shown to us, and I honestly think that that's fine. All we need to know about his character is that he hates Hao to a very extreme degree. This way, he's still a functional antagonistic force. Now, he does become more of a comic relief character later on, but that's after the X-Laws lost their relevance to the plot, whereas in the new version, the X-Laws remain mainstays past this reveal. It's just baffling seeing his character handled in this way. He did have comedic elements to him, like his extreme dedication to Jean, but he was generally supposed to be taken seriously, and after this, I can't anymore. Anyways, after this, Yo and the X-Laws sit around a table and drink tea together, and everything is all hunky-dory. After everything that happened, the X-Laws allow Yo to participate in the Shaman fight again, and then Yo discusses the plan to take down Hao. Since no one can realistically stand up to Hao, he'll eventually win the Shaman fight and integrate with the Great Spirits. However, upon doing this, he'll enter a slumber, providing everyone with the opportunity to kill him while he's vulnerable. This is why Hao's been gathering a bunch of allies to protect him in his sleep. This plan works, it's logical, and it's a good setup for what I think will be the final arc. The next episode starts with Ren, Horohoro, and Chocola fighting their match against one of Gandara's teams. During the fight, there's a flashback of them preparing for the fight. They ask Chocola for help since at this time he's the strongest of the three, and then he says, "You should meet my teacher." Who the fuck is Abba? Where did he come from? When was he a thing? When did Chocolove meet him? Are they happy together? I don't know the answers to any of these questions, and neither does this anime. I feel like there should have at least been a scene where the show establishes that Abba was a thing, because as it stands now, he feels like a cheap plot device to make the character stronger when we already had a much better arc for that. That's another thing too. In the next few episodes, Yo and his friends will go through a bunch of power boosts, which render the recent power boost they just got kind of useless. It makes me think, well then, what was the point in doing the other jump in power that they just recently got? If the characters spent more time using their new power before the next training thing, then it would feel more justified, but that's not what happens. In the fight, Ren and Chocolove get taken out, leaving the rest to Horohoro, and then it's revealed that Horohoro was a lot more powerful than he let on. He even acknowledges that he's been aware of this power this whole time. Aw, what a nice guy.
なんか俺たちやりづらくなっちまったな。
それもこれも貴様らが隠し事をするからだろう。
Well, shit, never mind. He looked like he didn't care at the end of episode 40. Why is he suddenly being so anal about it now? Well, he doesn't stay mad for too long since they get interrupted by 3 pedophiles, I mean, the people from Gandara, because Sati, Gandara's leader, wants to make them stronger by killing them and have them undergo training in hell. A group of characters infiltrate Hao's garbage dump in an attempt to kill him, and there's a great scene of Hao murdering them. Not just that, but we also get some more insights into his character with this. There's a scene with him crying and calling for mommy. But one of the most important plot details to keep in mind is that these rogue X-Law members sent one of their angels to take over a fucking satellite and fires it at Hao. This will be important for later. There's another subplot in this episode revolving around the remaining members of the X-Laws, along with Manta and Tamao, getting attacked by the brother of the guy who they killed in a previous round of the Shaman fight. After a bit of being chased, the car crashes, which, don't worry, none of them are really dead, but this does send Lizurg to hell as well. While this is happening, Sati meets up with Yo, Ryu, and Faust.
それに私をお忘れですか梅宮龍之介
You stupid motherfucker. Sati says that she's here to kill Yo, which is the dumbest and most misleading thing she could have said here, but whatever, and Yo decides to fight back. I understand that he wasn't planning to kill Sati here, but fighting back kind of goes against the whole what goes around comes around theme that they've been trying to go for. It's not like fighting was his only option. He could have tried to run like he did against Hao's guys. After all, beating Sati up will still result in a very aggressive reaction from her followers. I give a pass to Yo's fight with the X-Laws previously because a lot of people's lives were at stake, but this doesn't have that. Anyways, Yo actually dies here, and when he gains some form of consciousness again, he's in hell. Real quick, would just like to mention the fact that Yo doesn't even blink at the fact that he's dead. Can he be revived? Yes, but I'd at least expect some kind of reaction to the fact that he died, at least a feeling of anxiety, since he has no control over coming back to life. He doesn't even know for certain that he can be revived, since Faust, the only person who would and could revive him right now, is standing right in front of the person who had seemingly just killed him. I guess his reaction to this is justified by the fact that he lacks the emotions to express fear or anything of that kind of nature, but so many people weren't taking that into account when I said what I did about 10-year-old Yo. A demon does explain what's happening after he doesn't react to the fact that he died. Just really want to make that clear. I like Yo's lax reaction to the demon that caused him so much pain before. It's very in character for him. Hear that, guys? In character. Something that 10-year-old Yo wasn't. So the demon guides him through hell and tells him he needs to overcome a series of challenges to train before coming back to life. The first challenge turns out to be one of Yo's ancestors, specifically the one who killed Hao. It's pretty cool. I also like where this goes too. Instead of just doing the typical shonen fight thing, the two instead take the time to sit down and talk after clashing swords for a bit. Maybe that would seem boring on a surface level, but at least this gives us more information about Yo's ancestor. We got to know him a lot more than we would have if they had just fought normally.
ヨウ君、君もちゃんと子を残してきたのかね。
Oh my god, shut up. Other than this moment, I really like the rest of this little chat that the two had. One moment that stands out the most is when Yo gets met with 2 alternative ways to deal with Hao. One is to have Hao's soul completely extinguished.
おいらはもう一つのやり方を選ぶ。
This is definitely the type of thing his character would do. I also like how his ancestor is sympathetic to his decision. It's just a nice little moment the two share together. We cut away from this conversation to Chocolove, and Abba tells him that he can have his sight back because he's in hell. It makes sense if you had the context. It's a small thing, but it bothers me that he just asked for his sight back. I know it's not permanent and he'll go blind again, but it seems really shallow of him to bend the rules every now and then just because he can. All the while, more of Hao's goons start moving to take out key players in the story, while their bodies are lifeless. Just in general, this arc is really good at building a sense of urgency and tension. It keeps adding on events that build on the last, and it's fun to watch. The reason why Yo, Ren, Horohoro, Chocolove, and Lizurg are training in hell is because they're the 5-star warriors, a group of 5 shamans who will do a better job at slightly inconveniencing Hao than others would. I really like the concept, it's cool. The next episode starts off with what's, in my opinion, the most interesting development of the show by far. Thanks to the big fuck you laser those assholes fired before, told you it would be relevant, foreign nations around the world have seen it and will come to the island to investigate, meaning that the shaman fight might become an international event. And now Hao has even more people to kill and the stakes are higher than it's ever been. Let's ignore that very scary fact and return to our heroes who are all shown doing their own thing in hell. In between these scenes of our heroes training, the anime cuts in and out of things happening on the island, which are surprisingly just as interesting as seeing the protagonists fighting their way through fucking hell. And it's just engaging to watch. The show still has some issues with production, but I don't really care about those things because what's happening is enough to keep my attention. It's honestly done really well. Everything culminates into a massive problem for the main characters, and it's great. A shit ton of revivals later, and all of the main characters except for Lizurg have been revived after completing their training, and so the main characters start another revival train to bring back everybody who had died in order to negate the tragedy that Hao had inflicted, and the arc ends with a confrontation between Anna and Hao. One thing that I would like to mention is that the power system in this anime isn't explained very well, so things like Anna using an Uno reverse card to level the playing field against Hao doesn't really come off as clever as it's supposed to, but it instead seems like an ass pull to make sure that Anna doesn't get her ass kicked. But it's an issue that gets outweighed by how good this arc is overall. Yo interrupts the fight between the two and sits down to have a chat over coffee with Hao. It's pretty funny the way it's done, and once again, this is something that I can see Yo doing. The scene itself sheds more light on Hao's plan, and there's even a well done air of suspense towards the end of the conversation as well. I find it interesting how Shaman King 2021 has me more invested in these simple conversations between characters rather than its fight scenes. For example, this scene. The way the two's personalities and philosophies mesh, there's just something so captivating about it, in my opinion. Scenes like these are where the new Shaman King truly shines. The arc ends with Lizurg still training in hell, Ren, Horohoro, and Chocoleve's fight with Yo underway, and the Tao and Asakura families get... Hold on. Mick, buddy, put on some clothes already. Anyways, the two families are holding a meeting to discuss the final battle, and that's where the arc comes to a conclusion. Again, very solid stretch of the show, one that was intense and set up the stakes well. I really liked the new episodes of Shaman King 2021, and if you're gonna ask me why I was still so negative in this video, then I'd have to say, because I still secretly hate the show.